Well, it's the book I wish I'd been able to read when I was in my 20s and 30s. It's designed to help people understand that if they're struggling to save, there's a lot of stuff that happens in our own brains that can get in the way of us making rational long-term financial decisions like saving for the future.
I think the key word is rational. Can we all be rational?
Yeah, no, we can't. No, we're not wired to be rational,
Exactly.
right?
Welcome to the Tao of Chao podcast, where we will try to find balance and provide a clearer path forward in this uncertain world.
My guest today is Ann Lester. We recorded this at the 2024 Spark Forum at Palm Beach Breakers Hotel, where I interviewed Ann about her latest book, Your Best Financial Life, Save Smart Now for the Future You Want. And here is Ann. Well, we have a wonderful guest today with us, and I'm going to read a little bit about Ann Lester. She is a former portfolio manager and served as head of retirement solutions for JP Morgan Asset Management until 2020, while at JP, and advanced the firm's market-leading retirement strategies by developing new investment products and using behavioral economics, one of my favorite things, to integrate anonymized data and reveal fresh insights. She holds 3 patents for the development of innovative financial service products and analytics. And here's Ann. And I know there are a lot more to it. I'm just like trying to struggle to make sure I read it correctly in this book that we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about, her new book. So, and I know other activities like, please share, please tell.
Well, in addition to having just published this book
Yes.
and being out talking about it at conferences like this one,
Yes.
I also serve on several corporate boards. I'm on the
Okay.
board of Partners Group, which is a publicly traded Swiss private equity company.
Yes.
So I go to Switzerland fairly often for board meetings, which is great.
I feel bad for you.
Yeah, yes, it's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. I also serve on the board of Human Interest Advisory, which is a fiduciary 338 advisory firm that works with human interest, a record-keeping company. And I'm also an education fellow for the Alliance for Lifetime Income, which is a not-for-profit research organization helping to demystify lifetime income opportunities and options for Americans.
How much time do we have?
Exactly.
Just those area is phenomenal. Why don't we start with this book, which we thank. I thank you for signing a copy for me.
Well, you're very welcome.
I feel privileged. So I understand it's for the younger generation, or at least younger than me for sure.
Maybe.
So let's start from the younger and then work to the older. Time value of money, all that. Share a little bit about, summarize what you who is the target audience, and what message are you sending?
So I wrote the book for Gen Zers and Millennials, basically people under 40, 45 years old, depending on when you start counting. I guess millennials are 1980, so that's 44 years old now.
Yes,
and
so young.
I wrote it because, well, it's the book I wish I'd been able to read when I was in my 20s and 30s. It's the book I wanted my kids, who are in their mid to late 20s, to have to read. And it really is designed to help people understand that if they're struggling to save, number one, they're not alone. Number two, there's a lot of stuff that happens in our own brains that can get in the way of us making rational long-term financial decisions like saving for the future. And often, just the fact that you understand a little more about what's going on in your brain can help you actually create better circumstances, use some hacks that can actually put you on the road to more successful investing and saving.
I think the key word is rational. Can we all be rational?
Yeah,
for a
no, we can't. No, we're not wired to be rational,
Exactly.
right? We're just
exactly.
not.
So, what are some of the rational actions that you are suggesting that most every generation actually, but let's say the younger generation are not aware of the irrationality or not serving in their best self-interest?
So I think there are a couple of things. One, it's really, really hard to understand how harmful not saving and investing in your 20s is going to be for your future self.
Yeah.
So another way to say what I'm hoping this book does is help people understand the consequences of decisions most people don't realize they're making. when you're not maxing out on your 401k contributions or maxing out on the match even in your 20s, you're making a big decision to give up free money.
Yes.
You're giving up decades of compound return, which is magic. Right? It is
Of
truly
course.
magic.
Of
And
course.
so the combination of missing those company matches if you have a 401k plan at work and the compound returns on those is going to create a huge headwind that will be very difficult for you to dig out of in your 40s and 50s.
Yes.
Because you'll have to save massively more money than you would have if you'd just been able to contribute 3, 4, 5, 6% of your salary in your 20s. So that's one big message. Another big message is it's very hard to start saving today, but it's kind of easy to promise that you'll start saving tomorrow, right? So the whole save more tomorrow thing, which is something absolutely I did not think of, the Nobel Prize winning research that was done decades ago that shows that if you make a commitment to increase your savings rate tomorrow, it's a lot easier to follow through on than if you try to deprive yourself of something you want today. So
Okay.
my advice in the book is to promise that you will save half of every raise you get from now on.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you will relatively painlessly put yourself on track to be saving 15 to 20% of your income probably in 10 years or so.
So as you know, in our wonderful country, one thing that is about consumerism,
Yeah.
and it's about consume and spend. Somehow we feel that our future is assured. Somehow we believe, or we want to believe, that there is security at the end, and that this whole your notion about deferring,
Yeah.
not deferring income, but deferring about what you need to do now. Sort of this short-term thinking and justifying that I will change tomorrow, or I will do something about it tomorrow. I think that's really powerful. It's very hard for most individuals to have the. I use the word maturity only because I have 2 kids. Maybe not the right term to use, but having the wherewithal to suppress the short term, and for the betterment of long term. What's your thought on how do we help people to think in that way in a very disposable, consumer-driven environment where credit and everything is just at your doorstep?
Yeah, I think it's really hard today to do that, partly because, as you just said, it's so easy to spend money today. I remember when I used to have to either have a checkbook in my
Yes.
purse or cash to buy something. Okay, that was a while ago.
Yes.
But you had to physically go to a store.
Yes.
You had to physically have a checkbook or physically have cash, and there were a
Yes.
lot of barriers or things that would slow you down on your way to spending money. So,
Yes.
now we were just talking about phones. You could
Yes.
just start buying things from your watch,
Amazing.
right? I mean, is that good? I don't know. I don't know that Americans think things will work out in the future so much as just not think about the future. I think we're just a very present place. And I think if you look at other, I lived in Asia and in Europe, I think other cultures just have a different mindset about the future and their own history, right? I think
Yes.
Americans very much
Yes.
live in the present moment more so
Yes.
than many other cultures do. So that doesn't help. I also think there's a lot of brain science. Future discounting is real.
Yes, yes.
Maybe Americans are more susceptible to it than other cultures. I don't know that. I'd be interested in seeing research on that. But it's in as small a thing as it being 10:30 at night, and you're finishing an episode of a series, and that little skip intro thing comes up, and you go, yeah, I got time to watch one more. And then you think, well,
It's like 2 a.m.
yeah, well, exactly, right? And that you've just fallen victim to future discounting, right? But we've all done it. Like, I literally did it 3 nights ago. Like, I can watch one more episode, and then it's 2:00 in the morning, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did
What
that.
am I
Okay.
doing?
Well, we do it with binge watching
Yes.
Netflix. I do it reading
Yes.
books all the time. I'm at 85%. I can't stop reading now. I know it's 1:00, but we do it with food. We do it with money, right? We want what we want when we want it. And one of the tricks, I think, to shifting that is to understand that that's what you're doing. and then try to think of creating environmental cues for yourself
Yes.
that can interrupt that.
So I think our entire capitalist system, and I'm a capitalist, let's be clear, I wasn't suggesting that's something wrong, but it's really about do it now. Everything is do it now. So our peer group is that way. Buy it now, lay away, buy it now, take it now, pay me later. All that credit idea has been years in the decades in the making. So I think it's very much part of our culture. And I think that books like this and what you are talking about, and really honing in the importance of like a squirrel putting some nuts away come winter, you won't regret it.
Yeah.
But the problem is retirement is not just one winter.
No, I don't think there's anything wrong fundamentally with trying to smooth your consumption out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And,
Yes.
so that's why people can borrow money to buy a house, right?
Yes.
If you had to save, and, Italians still have to put 50% down on their house.
Yes.
So it takes a really long time. We think
Yes.
saving 15 or 20% is bad.
Yes.
Like, try 50.
Yes.
A
Yes.
lot of other countries still have 10 and 20-year mortgages.
Yeah.
So is it wrong that we can smooth out our housing consumption? I think that's terrific. But I do worry that that people, and I put myself in this camp, right? It's hard for me as well to live with the discomfort of not having something that you want when you want it. I think that's a muscle we need to try to build a
Yes.
little more.
Yes. Sort of bad habit building,
I don't-
overlaying bad habit with good habits.
Yeah. I think it's tolerating discomfort, right? And
That is so un-American.
well, it's
So why would I want to do that? Right?
Well,
so, especially the young.
it's hard,
Yes,
and
it
it
is.
doesn't feel good. So
It
if you can get out of that moment of discomfort, of course you want to.
Yes.
But
yes,
you
yes.
also have to try to ask yourself, is this that bad? I mean, I kind
Yes.
of, I think an analogy sometimes is this kind of like being in a middle seat on a cross-country flight, right? It's not comfortable. I really don't want to be in that middle seat. But you know what? The second I get off the airplane, I forget about it and it's done.
But the price is right.
Well, the price is right. Well, see? I mean, yeah.
Yes. So it's a series of trade-offs. And I think that most people don't want to have trade-off. They want to have the cake and eat it too. So present is having the cake and discounting into the future. And think about it in the
I think
future.
that the problem isn't so much that you stop and think about it. The problem is you don't think about it. And that's
Wonderful.
where our brains get in the way. Our
Wonderful.
brains don't give us the choice.
Yes.
We just find ourselves doing it. Like that skip intro thing. It's not like you stop and think, wow, do I really want to? I don't. Like sometimes you just do it and you don't even
Yes.
think about it. That's the really dangerous stuff.
Yes.
So a lot of the book is really trying to help people understand where these different pitfalls are for people. And everybody has their own framing, their own propensity to some of these things
Yes.
versus others. I am a very bad future manager. Like I would have failed the marshmallow test 100%. But I'm a really rational investor. Like I don't
Yes.
get fussed about investment risk. I'm like, yep. So
Yes.
that I'm good at. But like the marshmallow thing, terrible.
No. Okay.
Terrible.
So, being in the retirement business, we are, especially now, as the boomers are supposed to be retiring at the rate of 10 or 11,000 a month for the next, God knows how many more years.
Decade or so,
Yeah,
yes.
or more, right? So we are starting to think, a bit late, but we as the industry, thinking about how we want to make sure that there will be sufficient income at retirement. And what we have learned, obviously, is that a lot of people are undersaved, which is exactly your point. And not only undersaved, and yet those who have saved have underinvested. And where they didn't quite have the privilege of your target date series funds, where they sort of gave you the rein
The
to
reins, and you took care of it for them,
right,
yeah.
to take care of it for them. And so again, they are not rational about risk and how to understand risk. And
I think that's a little blaming the victim here. So I'm gonna just say
Okay.
that Arissa is 50 years old.
yes,
So many people did not work for companies that had 401k plans.
yes,
until they were in their 30s or 40s, probably.
Yeah.
And auto enrollment has only really been a thing for the
Yes.
last 10 or 15 years.
Yes.
Auto escalation has only just started becoming a thing. So here's a fun fact. Gen Z and Millennials have more money saved up for retirement than Gen Xers did or Boomers did at
For
the
sure,
same
Boomer,
age.
Sure.
Right? So I think
Maybe
that was
that's
a
why.
little unfair. I think
Okay.
that was a little
All
unfair.
right.
And for decades, we in the 401k industry thought it was terrific that we tried to teach 401k participants how to trade and how to manage their portfolios,
yes,
right? So
yes,
we encouraged
yes.
the proliferation of menus. Now, we know now that too many choices makes people stop
Sure,
interacting,
sure.
but I remember when I joined this industry in the 2000s, early 2000s, we thought more choices was good.
course.
Oh, you want another fund? That's great. Now you have 217 to choose from. You must be really happy now, right? I
All
mean,
paralyzed.
that's terrible,
Yeah,
right?
it's
So
It is terrible.
I will say it's a little unfair to blame people for not doing it well because I think we set up a system. Again, it wasn't designed to provide the replacement for a defined benefit pension. It was designed as a supplemental
Sure.
savings program. So, given that
Fair.
history,
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to blame people.
So I think the issue is I wasn't trying to blame them. I'm thinking that a lot of people don't understand risk.
Correct.
And so it's the
Correct.
risk part that I think, not fault, but I think not understanding that risk is part of investing. And the long run, risk commensurate with return. And I think if we focus more on the volatility, the short term, we'll lose sight of the big return over longer term.
Yes, I 100% agree
And
with
so
that.
that part, I'm not faulting, but I think we need to be, even though you and I probably instinctually know that because we're in the business, whereas I think if you take a person who never invested and basically afraid of losing, whatever that means
Yeah.
on paper
Yeah, yeah,
even, that's why we think that having professionally managed target date funds and multi-asset portfolios is so natural now, but it certainly wasn't because we're
No.
teaching them to cook.
Well, and I agree that, well, two things. One, I've always said risk is what you have to spend to get return,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And with no risk, you get no return. So
Yes.
that's just true. There's also a lot of research that shows that in the last decade or so, participants have become a lot better at not freaking out and selling when the market goes down.
Yes, yes.
Because they're invested in a qualified default investment option, often a target date fund, and they're like, okay, they told me I shouldn't trade it, so I'm not going to, and
Yes.
that patience has been rewarded.
Yes, yes.
So I think that's, on balance, been very good.
It is very good, and I think in a way, this kind of one conclusion one can make is let's not stay too involved in it. Let us do it for you. Let the ERISA system take care of you by having fiduciary responsibility, picking the right thing for you, and let it ride.
Yeah.
Let it ride.
Yep. And I
Oh,
think the sort of financial press in the past has not done anybody any favors by
No.
trying to make things sound more interesting than maybe they are.
Well, it's all
Exciting.
conflict. It's all
Yeah.
conflict.
Well, yeah.
In some way.
Bad
right?
news.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned the income association.
Mm-hmm.
That's a huge thing because boomers decided that, well, I better wake up. I submit waking up a little late. But anyway, wake up and start thinking about how we deal with whatever we've saved that we will not outlive on some level. And number two, how do I generate that income so I can live? So one is not outlive, the other
Yep.
one is how I can live. What's your overall thinking? Because certainly every financial service industry participant is involved in this whole, trying to figure this out. And it's a difficult thing to figure out. So tell us a little bit of how you're thinking it, what you think is the way forward.
Yeah, so I guess I'd say personally, I think one way we get in our own way, and I say this both as individuals and maybe as the financial services industry, is we keep trying to find the right answer. And I would argue that there is almost never a right answer.
Okay.
There are several wrong answers. And then there are a bunch of things that will probably work out just fine.
Okay.
But we get hung up on, we got to get it right. And if you don't know how long you're going to live,
Right.
and you don't know what the markets are going to do in the future,
Yes.
you definitionally can't get it right because you don't. There are too many unknown variables. So part of this whole problem-solving challenge to me is actually letting go of the notion that there's a right answer, and just saying what's going to be a good answer.
Okay.
Because I can't get to the right answer. It's impossible.
The
So
right
I'm going to
answer
get
is
a
only
good answer.
look backwards, you will know it's right or wrong. You cannot look forward to know it's
okay,
right or wrong.
but-
Right? Am I correct? That's what
yes,
you're saying? Yeah.
and sitting here where we are today, the probability of getting to that right answer is almost zero.
Zero, yeah.
So let it go as a concept and just say, okay, great. I'm going to let go of perfection. What's a good answer for me?
Okay.
So that's number one.
Right.
Number two, there's been some really interesting research, most recently by Dave Blanchett and Michael Finke, who have looked at how people spend money
Yeah.
if they've got some guaranteed income. And I saw this play out with my own parents, actually, because I nagged them into buying an annuity, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Okay.
Because I got tired of my mother, and this was during the financial crisis, like saying, we're going to run out of money. Mom, you're not going to run out of money. We're going to run out of money. Mom, you're not going to run out of money. And she said, well, what should we do? I said, buy an annuity. And then my dad said, well, what if we die? And then I said, you won't have the money to inherit. And I said, well, you'll be dead then, won't you? And you won't care. Like, what? There's a dutiful daughter answer for you, right? So
I'm trying to process that, how they would feel about that.
yeah, it was not a good answer. But I finally convinced them to put some money into an annuity,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they instantly stopped worrying. And I said, take Social Security, take what you guys have. My dad, parents actually both worked as educators, and so they've got some pension money coming in.
Yes.
And then I said, figure out what your fixed costs are,
Yes.
and then annuitize enough to cover all of your fixed costs. When you add up
Yes.
Social Security,
Yes.
these little pensions, and then this annuity,
Yes.
and then you'll be fine. And then you can just not worry.
Yes. Yes.
And then if the markets are doing well, you can go to Europe, and if the markets aren't doing well,
Don't
you
go.
don't go on a vacation, right? But and the research that David and Michael just published, which is on the Alliance for Lifetime Income's website, actually shows that when it gives you permission to spend.
Yes.
And I think one of the challenges with defined contribution is because there's no right answer, because nobody knows when they're going to die, because we don't know what the markets will do, it's very difficult to figure out how much you can safely spend.
Yes.
And so a lot of people default to looking at the required minimum distribution number and say, oh, well, I guess that's what I can spend. But for most people, that's going to be underspending.
Right.
For most people, the 4% rule will be underspending, except sometimes it's not if the markets are bad. So you get back into that what if place. So I think some level of guaranteed income can be very, very, very helpful in managing that risk and giving people peace of mind.
You think it's more managing that risk from a psychological standpoint or truly managing risk from a statistical standpoint?
Both, because once you lock in the income that you need,
Yeah.
you can actually afford to take more investment risk on your portfolio because you don't have to worry about not being able to pay your electricity bill.
So those are the privileged ones who are able to have the money to provide for the minimum living expenses or essential living expense, however you want to call it, which is your point. We have looked at some data that shows that not necessarily majority of the people have that privilege. We talked about this morning on the keynote. We talked about that Social Security Administration had made it clear that by 2035 or 34, the amount of income they draw from working individuals to support the pensioner, shall we say, will not satisfy 100%, and a haircut of anywhere from 21 to 30% may be necessary. Now, I put maybe because there's always other things that the government can do. So it gets more complicated for even people who are trying to plan.
Yeah.
How do you think about if you're back in the business in really on a one-on-one basis? I think a lot of people talk about advice. You know, really need somebody who can help you to walk you through those, not perfect answers, of course, but the sequence of decisions to help you reach a certain stability both psychological and what have you. How do you think about talking to them today than, say, 10 years ago? Is there any change, or is pretty much the same approach you would use?
I think given, had we lived in a different universe, and had we had a Congress that would have been able to tackle the Social Security issue, which was visible 10 years ago, it would have been pretty easy to make some relatively minor tweaks to the program that would have been largely invisible, just like the program was tweaked back in the 80s, right? The Tax Reform Bill of 86, I think, is the one that made some small changes that pushed the full retirement age from 65 to 67, right? Had they done something 10 years ago, you would have been able to do something similar now that would have shifted things around a little bit, but maybe not impacted certainly current retirees or near retirees. Sadly, in 2024, with a decade left or less, the maneuvering room to do something that will have minimal impacts on current and soon-to-be retirees, I think, is rapidly closing, if not closed. So I think if I'm thinking about my own planning, I have not yet started claiming Social Security, although my husband is eligible to start claiming now.
Okay.
Told him, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Wait till you're 70. It's prudent to think about saving a little more.
Saving more.
Or delaying retirement a little longer, certainly delay claiming, or having a few scenarios that say, well, if this happens, then what's my plan? What can I start doing today, and what can I do in the near term and long term to make the adjustments I might need to make? And I think depending on the fraction of your total income that Social Security will represent, that's going to be a huge deal or a smaller deal. Now, I am, for better or for worse, in an income situation that Social Security, while is meaningful for everybody, is not like driving my income in retirement. So for me, it's a relatively minor annoyance. For a lot of Americans, it's not going to be a relatively minor annoyance. It's going to be a dramatic. So I hope that when we hit the point that we may hit, that the adjustments that are made to increase taxes on the more highly compensated, and that they really do everything they can to preserve the benefits, say, for 50th percentile and lower income, or like they really have to be mindful. They can't just give everybody a 21% cut, because that would just be catastrophic. So I'm hoping that they manage to do things in such a way that
that would be a very reasonable. I would say that.
The math on solving this problem is not hard.
No.
But we've known that for more than a decade.
No courage to do it.
We have known that for a decade.
And so I think. Does it not point to, when you start talking about sort of a relativeness on how you plan, what are the what-ifs? Most people can't think that way, or they're not in our industry, they don't think that way. You think that advice becomes more important?
I absolutely think advice becomes important. I think, I get on a soapbox a little bit about this, but I think, in my view, the financial services industry has often overestimated the importance of portfolio management decisions and the impact that they'll have on an individual client's life versus the impact of a lot of what I wrote about in this book, which is how can I help you save more and understand when and how to spend less, because that's everything else being equal, much more important than getting another 50 basis points or 100 basis points of return, right? If you can save 3% more of your income, that is way more important than getting 50 basis points more return. And so I think that's where, or helping somebody not freak out and sell at the wrong point, right? So I think advisors can play a huge role in helping their clients understand the consequences of spending decisions. I am, as a former active portfolio manager who is currently serving on the board of an active asset manager, sad to say that I think investing is, the commodity answer is pretty good. You can make it better, right? And I'm happy to say I think it's worth paying the money to get a better answer, but the commodity answer is not bad.
It's better than no answer.
If you get the savings wrong,
Yeah.
the best investment won't help you.
Yes.
So
Yes.
to me, the really important thing to focus on is savings, which is why
What
I
you're
wrote that
saying.
book. Yeah.
So I will summarize what I learned so far is save early, save often.
Yes.
And that's certainly true for the young ones. But it sounds like even older ones should continue to not stop saving to the
Absolutely.
extent that they can. And that we need to be the rational self in the sense that we can, if we can. And that when you start thinking about planning, really to have a professional who can take a fiduciary position to help you, to at least offer you the various scenarios,
Yes.
to allow you the opportunity to make a determination, the decision that makes sense to you. If you have the assets and you continue to worry about outliving your income, or you're just nervous, Nelly, about the spendability of your assets, annuity is possibly a good alternative, again, through planning to making sure that everything works well. So it's a combination of all that hopefully we can improve the lives of our future selves with more peace and tranquility and less stress.
Well, yes, and I think you just said something really important with less stress. Again, to me, understanding the consequences
Yeah.
of decisions is a critical step to getting to that less stressful place. And then having a plan A and a plan B and a plan C and maybe a plan D so that you know what levers you can pull if you need
Yes.
to pull some levers
Yes.
to bring yourself back into balance. And to me, that's the key to leading having your best financial life.
Sure. So I would say that, well, thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that. And I apologize, I haven't yet read this because I just received it from you. I would recommend, all the young people, all the parents of young people.
Well, that's another way to go about it, yes. Christmas. The
everybody should
holiday
read it.
season is coming.
Right. To look at Anne's latest book, Your Best Financial Life. I mean, who doesn't want that title?
Exactly.
I absolutely want that. So thank you so much for spending time with us and
thank you.
at Spark Forum 2024. And I look forward to spending more time with you in the future.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank
Delighted
you.
to have done it.
Thank you.
You can always find more episodes by visiting philipchow.us/podcast or find us on your favorite podcast app. You can always leave us feedback, ask questions, or request a topic for us to discuss by sending an email to pc@philipchow.us.
Views expressed in the Chao podcast are individual opinions, and they do not represent the employers of each guest or the firm each guest is associated. Our podcasts are for educational and informational purposes only and should not be deemed or viewed as investment advice or recommendations. Please consult your personal financial advisor, investment expert, or investment fiduciary before taking any actions about your plan and investments.